Okay, now let's look into another important concept in Python. Okay, and this is the concept that we are going to use in almost every program that we will do from now on. Okay, so we are going to see input function built in. It is a built-in function, input function in Python, and everything about it. Okay. Okay, so before understanding the concept itself, I want you to understand the need of that particular concept. Okay, so in the context of one code, in the context of one problem, we are going to understand why do we need to use input function. Okay, so we are going to do a simple code based on the knowledge that we have gathered till now. So the problem statement is we are supposed to write a Python code to calculate square of a given number. Okay, so it is a simplest program that we can do. So I think you must have understood the problem statement. We are supposed to write a Python code to calculate square of a given number. Okay, so let us move towards our IntelliJ IDEA and let us try to solve the given problem. Okay, so we are in our IntelliJ IDEA now, and we are supposed to write the code for the problem statement that I told you. Okay, so let us do one thing. We will create another file for this particular problem. Okay, and in that file only we are going to create that particular project, in that particular code. Okay, so let us call this file as square. You can call it anything you want, and let us try to solve the problem in this file only. Okay, so the problem was we want to square any given number. Okay, so first of all we will need a number for that. So let us have any number that we want to square of. So suppose if I want to square number 2, I want a square of number 2. Okay, so to do that, as you must know, as you know, we will have to store that value somewhere. Okay, so I'll just zoom it in so that it will be visible properly. So let us store our number 2 into one variable. Okay, so I am calling my variable as number. Okay, and I am storing that particular number in that particular uh, variable which I have created. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to perform the as you can observe, I have put spaces over there. Okay, so this is the Puppet guide which is there in Python, which is the standard way of writing any code. Okay, so it is supposed to put spaces over there after this. Okay, so that is when you will get this green tick. Okay, so there is nothing wrong in that if you don't put it, but it is a general guideline which you should follow. Okay, now we want to perform or we want to calculate square of this. So how can we do that? Okay, so in the simplest way possible, if I want to square this particular number, okay, so what I can do is the simplest way is I can do this 2 into 2. Okay, and because I know the number is 2, so I can do this 2 into 2. I will get the answer. So I'll have to store this answer somewhere because I'm not using it. I can directly use print here, but generally what we did in the last program was that we stored our answer somewhere and then we showed the answer. Okay, so rather than using print directly, what I will do is I will create another variable. I will call it as square, and in that square variable I'm going to store the answer. Okay, so as you can observe, the space, as soon as I put spaces over there, that one line will that underline will go out and it will say that you have written the code properly. Okay, so as you can observe, the right tick is coming over there. So what we have done is I had number. Okay, so that was my variable which was having my number. So I wanted to perform this 2 into 2, but one thing that I'll have to do here is that I will have to change this 2 into, because we are having our number inside our variable. So what we will have to do is we will have to change this to number into number, right? So as you can observe, what I've done is I had my number, I had a number 2 inside my variable number, and I am doing the squaring of that by multiplying my number by the number itself. Okay, so we are evolving the code. Okay, as we are going ahead, we are making the code better and better. So because this is the better way of using the variables, and that is the reason why we are using variables, because we may or may not know which number would be there. So only when you, or only if you use the number here, then if you only change the value here, you can use, you don't have to change anything in the further code. Okay, so what we have done is we have written the square is equal to number into number. Okay, now I want to show my result. Okay, to show your result, what you'll have to do is you'll have to again write print. Okay, the print function is there that will show your result, and now the result is stored where the result is, our result is in square variable. Okay, so this code should be sufficient. This code will be enough, I think, to show our answer. Okay, so let us check whether we are getting our desired answer. So let us run our code, and let us check whether we get our output or not. Okay, so if I zoom it in, you can see that I am getting my output. Okay, so this was the most basic way of writing this code. Okay, and there are some limitations in this code that we will have to change or modify so as to make this code better. Okay, so I want you to just pause the video if you can, and try to understand what are the limitations of this code. You know the problem statement, just try to guess which are the limitations of this code. Okay. Okay, so by now I think you must have understood what is the problem with this code. The problem is that generally when we do a program, we create a program, the program is created for a non-technical person to use. Okay, non-technical in the context of he or she may not be able to access the code or use the, or change the code. Okay, so what they are expecting is as soon as you give them the code, only when they as soon as they execute that code, they should be able to enter their values and they should be able to get their output back. Okay, right now the problem here is that if I execute this code even for 100 number of times, it will always give me answer as 4. Okay, and there is no provision in the code so that we are asking the user to enter the number. Okay, we are ourselves, we are giving the number 2, and it will always print the value 4. And if I want to make any changes in the number, if I want to make the square of 3 number, so I will have to go here and change it. But for that you must know the code, you must know the programming, you must have to go inside the code and you'll have to make the changes, and then only if I run this code, then only I will find, or then only I will be able to get my answer. Okay, so this is not the case in the real-time applications. Okay, you will have to provision, you will have to make a provision for entering or getting the number from the user, and you are supposed to show the output. Okay, so how can it be done? Now the problem is I want to take this number that we are defining in the program from the user. Okay, and whichever number the user will give you, you are supposed to perform this square of that given number. Okay, so this is our actual task which was mentioned in the problem statement. Okay, so this is achieved using one function in Python that I have told you, or that we have said in the title, is the input function. Okay, so as to take the number from the user, there is a built-in function in Python which is called as input function. Okay, so let us first go in the documentation as we always do, and let us just try to find out what is Python saying about input function. Okay, input function in Python. Okay, so let us just try to understand what is the Python documentation for input function, and then we will see what we can do. Okay, so we'll just have to search for the official site as we did in the last code. Okay, so here it is, the docs.python.org. Okay, so built-in functions. Here we can find the required result that we wanted. Okay, so we are in the official Python site documentation. Make sure that, as I've told you earlier, make sure you are using the exact, or you are using the latest version that that is out there, 3.8.5. Okay, so that you will get the most relevant information. Okay, so these are some of the built-in functions in Python that are used or that we use inside the query. Okay, so as you can observe, one of the functions that we always use, print, it is already there. Okay, so these are other various functions. So as we are talking about, we were about to study one function which was input. Okay, so here it is, that input function. So if I just click over that, it will take me to that input function documentation, and what it is telling it, just try to understand it. If the prompt argument is present, okay, so this is the standard way of writing your function input. Okay, so this is how you are going to write it in the code. And input, first word is there, parenthesis is there, and inside that there is a prompt written. Okay, so what is that prompt we are about to understand? If the prompt argument is present, it is written to the standard output without, I'll just zoom it in, if so that it will be visible to you. Okay, I think it has become 2. Okay, so right now, as you can observe, the function input. Okay, so it is saying that if the prompt argument is present, uh, it is written to standard output without trailing new line. The function then reads a line from the input and converts it to a string. Okay, and returns that. Okay, so in simple language, just try to understand. They have given one example here. So you are supposed to use input function like this: write input, put parenthesis around it, and if you want to print any message on the output screen for the user, you can put it in single or double quotes, and you'll have to assign that to a particular variable, any variable that you want. Okay, so what is does is that if you write this line, whatever is written inside the single or double quotes, it will be printed as it is onto the screen, and the compiler will wait for the input from the user. Okay, as soon as it prints this message that you have written inside, it will wait for the input from the user. Okay, so whatever input you will give to that particular output screen, that input will be stored inside this variable s. Okay, so the one example they have given is, if you execute this line, okay, so there is, right now there we have written this much only. Okay, so this will be printed as it is onto the screen. So this is your output screen. Okay, so this much will be printed as it is onto the output screen. And suppose as an input I write this. Okay, Monty Python's Flying Circus. If I write this, what will happen is, it will, this message, Monty Python's Flying Circus, this message will be stored inside this particular variable s. Okay, and this will be considered as string. Okay, so because it is a string, it will be considered as a string. Okay, and the reason why it is considered as a string, it is explained in this particular paragraph. Okay, so it converts whatever you have given into string. So this is very, very important. Even if you give a number, that number will be also, that number will also be stored as a string. Okay, so what it is saying is, it converts it into a string. Okay, so this will be converted into string, whatever input you will give, and it will be stored inside this variable s. So next in the code, if you just put s, or if you just print s, okay, so it will print this string that is being stored. Okay, so there is no print written here. Actually, this is the way you can see the content of any variable in Python idle. So that is another way of using code. But just now, for our time understanding, just assume that it is the statement print of s. So we are printing whatever is written inside s. So it will print the message which was there inside that particular input. Okay, so this was the theoretical concept of input in the context of Python documentation, but we are going to see it in the simpler way. Okay, we are going to see in very simpler way so that you will understand it. Okay, so what changes I will have to do right now is that everything will be as it is. Just one thing that you'll have to change is, I will have to remove this 3, and here I am going to use that input function. So how you can use it? You can write input. Okay, and you are supposed to put parenthesis. Okay, now let us assume that I don't have any message to print onto the screen. Okay, and this much is my code. Okay, so what, we'll just try to observe what will happen. Let us understand here, it is not mandatory to have anything inside the input. You can have it, or you may not have it. Okay, so it is not mandatory. You can directly use it like this only. Okay, otherwise in the next way, After this we are going to see how we can put any message inside. Okay, so right now if I do only this much, okay, so let us see what will happen. So if I run this code, as you can observe, the output window is not showing anything. It is actually waiting for the input from the user. Okay, so I'll have to give some input. Okay, so the input, as the input is to be given, I will have to put it from the keyboard. Okay, so right now I will put input as 2. Okay, and I will press enter. It will create one error, it will generate one error. I will tell you why the error is coming out. Okay, so as you can observe, it is showing one error, and if you have understood what I had said earlier in the documentation, you must know what the error is. Okay, so this is a type error. Okay, there are various types of errors. This is a type error. Type error means the error is in the data type. Okay, and why it is why error is there? It is saying can't multiply sequence by non-int type str. It is saying that the value which is there inside this number or inside this number is not a number. Okay, so you can do multiplication between the numbers only. You can do multiplication between an integer value only or float value only. But right now what it is holding is not a number, it is holding a string. Why it is holding a string? Because in the documentation we had earlier seen that this input function, whatever input you will give it, I have given it input as 2. Whatever input you will give it, it will store it as a string, and string cannot be multiplied among itself. Okay, so that is the reason why it is showing us one error. So one thing that we will have to use or do in this input is that before input we have to use int. Okay, so another function is there that we make use of to convert the string into integer. Okay, so that function will be there. If you go in the documentation, if we switch back to documentation again, and if we check back again in the built-in functions which were there, so as you can observe, right below the input function there is one int function. Okay, so this int function, what it does, it return an integer object constructed from a number or string. So because input is giving a string, this will convert that into integer value. Okay, so I hope you have understood what is happening right now. This input will take the input from the user and it will be converted into int. Okay, so you'll have to use that inside this particular function. Okay, so let us just run this again and let us just check whether we are getting the output or not. Okay, so again it is waiting for the input. Again I'll just zoom it in. Again, suppose if I put input as 2. Okay, so it waited for some time and it has given me answer as 4. Okay, so we have got our required result. Again, suppose if I want to rerun this, so you can rerun this by pressing over here, or again you can run it by clicking right click over. So you can do it any way you want. Again, if I put suppose 4, okay, I'll just zoom it in. If I just put 4 and if I press enter, it will give me answer 16. Okay, so we are getting our desired result. The thing is that we have made use of function input. Input function always returns a string, but as we wanted a number in this case, that is why we have used another function outside it, which is called as int. So int function, what it will do is, whatever string that we are obtaining from this input, it will convert it into string integer value. It will be stored inside this number. Okay, and that will be given to this particular number. Multiplication will be carried out and it will be stored. Again, suppose if you want to convert that into float, what we can do is, instead of just int, there is another function which is float. Okay, so in the documentation again, if you search for the documentation of float, you must observe that float should be there. Okay, so float is there. So float, it returns a floating number constructed from number or string. Okay, so as you can observe right now, even whatever number I will give you, whatever, suppose if I give it like 4 only, so it will convert that into float only. Okay, so let us just see whether it is happening or not. So if I run this code, it is again waiting for the input, and if I put suppose 4 only, it is giving me answer as 16.0, not 16, because it had converted this into float and then assigned to our variable number. Okay, so same code is executed by using various functions. Okay, so let us again put that int as it is so that we can make our changes. Okay, let us make this code even better. Okay, so what could be better is rather than just waiting for the input from the user, let us make this code to ask for the input. Okay, so before getting the input, what I want to do is I want to ask the user for the input. So how we can do it? Just write print. Okay, and we want to print our message in single quotes or double quotes. Okay, so please give the number to be squared. Okay, so suppose this is my message. I'm printing one string. Okay, and that string is saying please give the number to be squared. Then the console will wait for the input. As soon as you give the input, it will be converted into integer because we want integer form. It will be given to, it will be passed to that number variable. That calculation will be done. It will be given to square and it will be printed onto the screen. So let us see whether we are getting the desired output or not. So if I run this, as you can observe, now the console is waiting. It has given me the message that please give the number to be squared. So just if I put the number that I want to square, so suppose if I put 7 here, okay, and if I press enter, it will give me the answer. Okay, so what we have done is we had just printed this message that I want to print in the output screen, and we have made this code look better as compared to the earlier one. Okay, but actually if you had heard to me while we were talking about the documentation part, it said that if you want to have any of such message, rather than using print function for that, what you can do is put that message inside this input, so it can be printed as it is. So what we can do is rather than printing it over here, what we can do is suppose if I cut this message and if I paste it over here inside this particular function. Okay, I'll just zoom it out a bit so that it will be visible. Okay, so let us remove this print function right now and let us check whether we are getting the desired output. What we have done is we have put that message inside this input function. Okay, so let us see whether we are getting the same output. So again I will run my code. Okay, so as you can observe, the same output I am getting. The input message is printed, whatever we have written, it is now waiting for my input. Okay, so if I suppose press 5, okay, so it will give me answer as 25. Okay, print function, there is one thing that you must observe here is that I have written it right in front of that. Okay, so in the print function it gives me a new line character. Okay, so that is why the 7 number was coming at the after the printf statement or the message, but right now it is coming right in front of it. So we are going to see those things in the detail, but don't worry about that right now. Okay, so I think you have understood how to use input function for printing anything, for getting input from user, and how we can convert the string into any format that we want. We have converted here the string into integer because we wanted integer. You can convert it into float if you want, or if you want the string only, then don't convert it, just use this input function and it will be it can be stored as a string inside the variable that you have provided. So I hope you have understood what is input function and how it can be used, and how to convert any data format, string format, into any other data format which is taken from input. So actually we are going to modify this code again so as to make it better. So we will do that in the next video. Okay then, so I will see you in the next video.